Hey everyone, thanks again for joining us for another edition of Ideation Podcast. I'm super excited today to bring in a couple of friends of mine. They are the co-chairs and co-founders of a company called Belay, a premium staffing company serving businesses all over the US. They have actually, this is an amazing story, have bootstrapped their business with no outside funding, and the company has generated over 100 million in revenue since its beginning and has now grown to over 1,000 team members, all of whom work from home, which is amazing. And then on top of that, they were named as the #1 best company culture in Entrepreneur Magazine. And then outside of that, if they weren't busy enough, they started a couple of other companies. One is a craft brewing company called NoFo Brew company, and they also own an advisory company, very fitting, that helps successful business owners own their companies, not run them, called Own Not Run. Perfect name for that. So Bryan and Shannon, thank you so much for spending a few moments with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, I'm going to jump right in and ask you a question, and that is, I know Belay has been very successful. Like, do both of you come from an entrepreneurial home, or is this something that just kind of was birthed later on in life as you're venturing through this world? Like, what's this backstory for you two?
For me, my parents were just working class people. My mom had various jobs, from working as a dental receptionist at a dentist office to working at Walmart. And my stepdad, after he got out of the Army, ended up having a home improvement business. So I guess you could say he was an entrepreneur, but it was always just like a very thin margins, like just enough to get by.
He operated like a nonprofit.
Yeah, gave away a lot of services. So.
No, for me and my family, my dad, I think he wanted to be more of an entrepreneur, but he spent most of his career working for other folks. And Michael's, it's an arts and crafts store. He was a manager there.
Got it.
Early on when I was a kid, he had a couple of dime stores in Missouri before Walmart kind of rolled through. But that's about as close to an entrepreneur family we have. It's been mostly us desiring to do something different that caused it.
Your mom, tell them what you said to her.
My mom said something not too long ago, and I don't recall saying it, but basically when I was very young, I said I want to have my own business because I don't want to work for anybody else.
That's always a good reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, now that's very much the case. We value our freedom, very much. And that was a lot of the drive for why we decided to start Belay 10 years ago.
So for Belay, was there a moment or a story that kind of surrounded the origin story, or was it kind of a side hobby? Like how did it all begin?
Yeah, in 2010, Bryan and I were both working for separate companies. I, at that time, was in the medical software side of healthcare, and Bryan was in a church construction company, so super niche market. And for various reasons, both of us were ready to make a change in our careers. And we always, talked about the idea of having a business or a restaurant or something, where we could build an asset. And with both of our careers in a point of transition, we're like, maybe this is the time. And that was the middle of the recession, right? The economy was not in a great place. We had secure jobs, 401ks saved up, but we still felt so compelled that we were in our early 30s, that if we were going to make a risk or take the risk and create something of our own, like this was probably the right time to do it.
Yeah. So we spent that whole summer in 2010 doing due diligence and thinking through and talking to business people that we thought were successful. And you got to keep in mind, like that was during the Great Recession. Unemployment was 9.6%. Right now, currently it's way higher, but that's so weird to think. But it was a very stressful time for us to really consider doing this. But a lot of successful business owners said, that we talked to in confidence, they said, you need to do this. Now's the right time. And we did. We turned in our notices on the same day, October 1st, 2010 to our employers within an hour of each other. And our kids were 2 and 5 at the time. And then we cashed out our 401ks and we used that as our startup capital. Don't know that I necessarily recommend that to other people.
It's just our story. just our journey.
Just our story. Don't. And then December 1st, we were on our own payroll of that year of 2010. And I'm so glad we did it in hindsight. I mean, we've been very fortunate to see the success come from this company. But man, it felt like heavy risk.
It was
Absolutely.
tempting to make it a side hustle. It was scary to walk away from our jobs at the same time with young kids, walking away from our health insurance and everything. It was really tempting for one of us to stay on, but early on we could tell we were really onto something, and that if we just went all in and focused our efforts, that we could go further faster. So I'm glad that we just sort of ripped that Band-Aid off and made it work.
Well, I started ideation in 2009. And
Yeah.
so, you know, a lot of my friends told me with all well-intended, like, this is a horrible time to start something. There might've been a couple of people who said, yeah, go for it. And
Yeah.
like we spent everything we had to try to launch, and obviously we don't regret that. But, so tell me about the idea of Belay, and what sparked that idea in you to go for a business like that.
Sure. Well, so in either 2008 or 2009, the 4-Hour Work Week came out by Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss. And in that book, at that time, he had referenced virtual assistant solutions, but they were all overseas. And, looking at our environment and where I was working, I had a virtual assistant that actually just lived in Charlotte and I lived in Atlanta. So
Mm-hmm.
technically that was virtual. And as we talked about it, we thought, gee, there's a lot of leaders right now in the States that could really just use a Trisha
Mm-hmm.
to get things done. And why couldn't they be here in the States? There's a lot of people without jobs in our country. Let's try and benefit this US economy. And it birthed out of that moment of saying, okay, everybody's pointing to these overseas solutions. Let's make a domestic play and let's really make it a gold standard. And let's let this be something where executives and business owners could really, um, leverage a service like this, but yet feel comfortable it was in the States.
And we wanted it to be much more relational than the models that were out there at the time, like layering on an individual at Belay to help navigate and oversee the relationship, so that it wasn't, okay, here's your VA, good luck, I hope it works out. That was important to us because we wanted to create a company that added a lot of value to those that we were serving.
And Belay is it's really simple. It's a rock climbing or a mountain climbing term. And it just simply means that you've got that person as that climber as they climb higher, that you're in the support role belaying them. But that's what we do. Our job is to do all that stuff, whether it's an assistant or bookkeeper, payroll, or, website services. We're there to belay our clients as they go and they try and do the thing that they've been called to do, whatever that is, whether they're a pastor or an attorney or a physician or an executive or entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about how timely this is, given all that's going around the world right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you even wrote a book called Virtual Culture: The Way We Work Doesn't Work Anymore. What has this moment in history, it seems very unprecedented type of time in our history, like, I know you and I, Bryan, were in a conversation not too long ago talking about, like, we're kind of forced for a season to work remotely.
Yeah.
So how has this kind of all merged together in your mind? Because I'm sure both of you are thinking, man, we have the perfect company that could, offer this type of support. In a season like this.
Well, it's interesting, like I would say, connected to the coronavirus, the world changed around March 16th of 2020. And what I mean by that was the conversation before that was we talked to prospects and they would say, okay, so how does this work from home thing work? Well, that conversation's over.
Absolutely.
Like leaders now know how to lead from home and people now know how to work from home. And it's been hard and people have had to, adapt to that type of working environment. But we've just always done that. We've never had an office. We have over 1,000 people on our team, and we've found a way to build meaningful connections and really have people work hard towards a mission and build a meaningful culture. And I just think that things are changing rapidly. I think we even talked about, like, is this the beginning of the end for commercial real estate space? And I think it's going to change. I truly do. I think offices will probably get smaller. They're going to convert to more of a training or a meeting platform and maybe some, shared services, but it's not going to be a row of cubicles anymore. And, it's going to be way less of that. Because a lot of people, while they've absolutely can't stand this virus and the things we've had to do connected to it, the one thing they actually have enjoyed, a lot of them, is working from home.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that employers are sitting there scratching their head saying, well, do we really need this big of an office? And business owners are going, I could save so much money if we didn't have an office. So
Right.
I think in all of that swirl of conversation, Belay is poised to help organizations with our key services, because I'll be honest, not everybody will be able to make the jump to virtual across our country. We've already seen evidence of that on the types of prospects that are calling us now.
Yeah, we definitely took an initial hit when, because a lot of our clients are small businesses. And so when they initially felt the impact of, their businesses, it trickled to us. And so we shifted really early on for our marketing team to start creating resources to help people figure out how to work from home, whether it was, how to lead from home, or as an individual team member, work from home for the first time, or like a lot of us are in the position of working from home with kids around. Not necessarily an ideal situation, right? So we tried really hard early on to create resources that would add value during this time where a lot of people were in panic mode.
That's good. I think every good business right now, everyone's trying to pivot. Obviously, some of kind of a service-based company like yours and ours, we probably have a little bit more flex than people like, your brewery is a different type of business. So when I think about this, is the reason you've been able to successful, because I doubt any entrepreneur's journey is like some type of 45-degree angle line of constant growth. So when you look back at Belay and you've kind of met multiple challenges and barriers over time, can you think of a moment or two where you pivoted in such a way that maybe you didn't know you were making the right move, but at the end of it, it kept you going? Are there any stories that come to mind?
We have a few.
We paid a lot of stupid tax over the years.
Same here.
A lot of lessons learned. Initially when we started, we actually weren't called Belay. We were Miles Advisory Group. And then we started another company that was Mag Bookkeeping. And then we started another company that was around writing, and another company around website. So before we knew it, we were 5 years into the business and had 5 different companies. And it worked for a little while, but then it got really complex really fast. And we could see our culture for the different companies shifting, and it was difficult to allocate resources, and our leaders were being pulled really thin or stretched really thin.
And our teams weren't cross-selling. I mean,
it was just, we were confusing the market. Like it just grew to a point where running those 5 organizations was not sustainable. So we consolidated them all. That's when we became Belay in 2017. And while it was the right decision to make, we definitely took a hit. If you think about the SEO build over the years, and rebranding is hard for any organization, but for us too, it was merging teams together. And so 17 was really a rebuilding year for us. But it was so critically important that we reestablished that foundation, because 2018 was remarkable. And that's when we really started to see, like, we hit that valley of death a little bit. And then we started to see acceleration that we never would have achieved being so disparate.
That's very true. Yeah. I think, and looking back on that season when we had the 4 companies and a parent company, a lot of that, and I'll speak for me, not necessarily for Shannon, was kind of like it felt good for my ego. We had this cool parent company, and we had these other companies we owned, and they kind of report into the parent company, but it just got to be like a giant goat rodeo. It was completely just all over the place with confusion. We had 47 different banking accounts we had to reconcile every month. It got to be too much.
Redundant IT systems.
We were totally confusing the market. So a friend of ours has a quote that I often think about to kind of keep us from ever doing this again, is that it's ego is dilutitive to net worth. And I see that, I get it now. And we've worked really hard to kind of beat that out of us, and me specifically, so that we could really be a really wonderful business that is all about everybody else.
Yeah.
And, but that was definitely a hard season. I could tell you one other one. We thought it would be good to hire some key players from the outside when we were on a rocket ship of growth, and in both instances, they kind of came in and put a lid on the business and its growth for a season at a time. And then when we let them go, our business would go back up. And what we found was that at those percentages of growth that we were doing year over year, bringing somebody in from the outside is more, I think it's good if you want to maintain market share or kind of bump along. But when you have leaders that you can promote from within, and you built a nice pipeline of leadership from the inside, which is what we did do. Yep. It really helped us kind of speed things along much quicker. So that was I'd say one of the more costly, bigger mistakes we made in the 10 years.
Another lesson learned.
I think that's so good. I mean, because I think everyone feels busy, and I think it's really difficult to think about creating space to think about your own business, because you got so many things to do, and you feel like, I can do this, I can do that, I can, we can add that, we can add this product or service, and it's so difficult. Like, putting on the brakes, what was that like? I mean, what were some of I would assume there's some level of anxiety. Is this going to work? Is it not? But it feels like you were both, even as partners in a business, to be able to come together and say, hey, that's the direction we're going to go. What was that experience like, working with each other through that?
That was actually, the consolidation of the companies was one of the most difficult situations we went through as business owners and as husband and wife. We were not on the same page about it. And, Bryan, it was his idea to consolidate. And I thought, man, we have spent all of this time casting vision around these 5 different entities and the importance of having them independently and, leading the teams in that direction. It was just such a 180 to then say, just kidding, we're going to bring it all together and it's going to be great. Follow us now, Yeah. And so, whereas he is definitely more of a visionary for what we do, big picture kind of person, I'm more, how are we going to do this? Organization, like operational side of things. And so I was also overwhelmed with the idea of all the work that was going to have to go into merging these entities together. But, we beat it up together, and it was a re-up moment for me. Honestly, I thought, okay, I can get behind this idea. I think it makes sense to consolidate. I just don't know if I'm the one to do it. And I had to do some soul searching and decide, no, this is definitely still a dream I want to pursue with Bryan, and I'll just become a better leader, And I grew personally through that. And we showed alignment to our team. I think that was important. Like, we could beat things up, behind the scenes and still walk out of those conversations as a unified front so that we could lead our teams well. But yeah, that was definitely a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard. We had a baby JFK moment where we talked about going to the moon, and, it was like, these are all words right now. We hope this actually manifests itself into what we hope it is. And we got everybody together on our corporate team, basically everybody that doesn't interface directly with the client.
How many people was it at that time?
There was probably 65-ish people. Yeah. Wow. And we basically, we relabeled the day Mission Possible, that it was completely possible what we were going to do. And we kind of unpacked why we were thinking the things we were wanting to do and how we were going to bring everybody together. And I'd say the majority of everybody pretty quickly jumped on board with the idea and made sense. There were a handful of leaders that, as this thing kind of got unfolded and where they sat in the org chart or whatever, they were very unhappy and left. So we made it really clear, this wasn't a move to let go of anybody. This was just a realignment of our business into one thing that's very obvious. And it was unfortunate. We lost some leaders through that it was a hard season of time just in general.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of leadership is building trust. And I know there's a lot of research and data. I was reading one recently by Harvard that talked about building a culture of trust.
Yeah.
So when you're in that type of season, creating a pathway where there's some level of definitely uncertainty, there may be
Mhm.
vision, but I think smart people are always thinking in terms of various scenarios of that
Sure.
vision. And so what were some things that you did, both of you feel like you did well during that season to kind of lead the group towards this unified vision? Because I'm sure there were nuances of differences of even like subcultures working based on the ventures
Yeah.
potentially. So how did you bring everybody together?
Well, I think one thing that I knew would be very critical is we had to have a name that had a lot of meaning behind it.
Mm,
And we had to have a personal connection to it. And Belay, because I do climb, and Shannon
yeah.
has, gone hiking and stuff like that out
I've
west.
climbed in an indoor rock climbing gym like
And
for
she's
your
really
birthday
good.
party. It's really fun.
But for me, like that word belay means something. So if you've ever been in
Mm,
a snowstorm and you don't hear the word belay, you don't climb higher.
mm,
You when you hear belay on that, and as faint as it might be, there's a lot of emotion connected to that because that person is actually screaming, "I got your back." Like it's okay for you to keep going. And so there's just a lot of meaning wrapped up in that. And so then we could articulate that. And I think that a lot of people grabbed hold of it. We spent a good amount of money on a marketing agency that really helped us rebrand really well. And that was money
mm,
well spent.
absolutely.
But something else I thought was very good. It was Shannon has a really excellent background in project management. She was a PMP certified individual, and she had a lady in our company
Mhm.
we appointed as a full-time project manager to this
Mm,
whole beast of a consolidation. And I thought that was just so
That
incredibly
helps so
necessary.
much. Yeah.
I
Because
mean,
everybody was already doing their jobs, right? Like,
yeah,
but the effort of consolidating the companies was so great that we needed somebody that was their full-time job. And through that role, we ramped up our communication. And I think that
mm,
really helped with building trust too. So not only did we keep reminding everybody why we were doing this and why it was important,
that's good.
we also gave weekly updates of key initiatives that were part of the consolidation so
hmm,
that our team was as informed as they wanted to be. You know, whether
Mm,
they dug into the updates or not, we were going to over communicate so that they knew we were thinking through this methodically, that we didn't want to miss anything, and that they could
mm,
trust us to do it as good as possible.
mm, mm. Well, I have to ask this since you are a married couple leading together, building companies together. Um, how has that impacted at all your relationship? Are you pretty good at like saying, hey, we're not going to think about work? The reason I asked is for like personal selfish reasons too, is my wife, she was in corporate for a very long time. And then
yeah,
about 4 or 5 years ago, she joined our company
yeah,
and transitioned. And so we worked together, and she's always helped to kind of build a company
Mhm.
from afar at some level. But, I remember like the first few months when she started working for us, like she would leverage our walks after dinner as project management update times. So I know there are more and more, I think, couples deciding, hey, this will give us a lot of flex for our
sure,
family. Let's build things together. It doesn't always work for people together, but for
Mhm.
you two, what's your relationship like both at home, given, what you do throughout the rest of your day?
sure. Well, I'll speak for me because she's the other half in this equation. I would just say I really have enjoyed it because I had witnessed Shannon work for a decade for a Fortune 10 company and
Mm,
do it masterfully well.
yeah,
So I thought that's the type of person I get the opportunity to work with on a
yeah,
day-to-day basis. So I already had a deep respect for her
yeah.
career-wise. And we're just two different people. We're
Mhm.
polar opposites, and it works. Like I'm rubber meets the sky. She's rubber meets the road, and those things just
Mhm.
really work. And
Yeah.
and we default to each other's strengths very well. And we have a standing owners meeting
Mhm. Every week.
that happens every week, and we cover off things like schedule and anything we want to put in the parking lot that's not necessary or at speed needs to be
Mhm.
decided on. So we've instituted some things I think are very helpful. But personally, I just really like being around her. And then, we get to do business travel together, and it's,
business trips are fun.
yeah. We get to have, remember when we could do business trips?
I do.
Way back when.
Lifetime ago.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
We're supposed to be in St. Bart's today. We're a little salty about it. I think, you mentioned like you and your wife talking about work on your walks after dinner. Like for Bryan and I, we've just chosen to have a very integrated, fluid work life schedule and balance. So for us, working from home, being a married couple, there's not a lot of separation between our work time and our personal time. And we're okay with that. Like we prefer that. We like to talk about business over dinner with our kids there, so we can use those opportunities to help them learn.
Sure.
And
there,
I think we all have our limits though, right? And sometimes you go through really taxing seasons at work and you need to just sit down and watch TV and not talk about the finances, right? And I think the more you're aware of your limitations for your own self, the more you can communicate that to your partner and say, I can't have one more work conversation today. I'm tapped out. And that needs to be okay too.
Yeah. We've subscribed to this. We started this 9 months into our business, but we believe this mantra that we kind of developed is own, not run, meaning that when the business doesn't need us day to day is the day that we actually own the company. Until then we run it. And we've just been lockstep in that agreement. Like, let's find great people, let's resource them, let's equip them, and let's get out of their way so they can actually run the entities that we've created. And that has helped keep a lot of sanity between the two of us, because then we're looking at the businesses through the lens of what it means to be a good business owner or owners together. And I think it keeps the emotion down and it keeps your decisions very objective when you can look at it that way.
So on that point, you have a company that advises business owners in just that, how to own
That's
it,
right.
not run it. So for you, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that would say, hey, I would love to do that right now with my small business, my own venture. Like, what kinds of things should business owners be thinking about to make that shift in that thinking as well as in practice?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things is deciding what you want from your business. Often what we found is talking to small businesses, especially, they don't have owner's intent. They have no idea what they want out of their business. They just want to make more money this coming year as they did, and it's way more than that to us. As we see these things as an asset, as it could be a legacy where you keep it in and hand it off to your kids or to someone else or whatever. It could be an asset that you want to, sell in the future or whatever those things are. We just find that a lot of business owners don't even build the intent around it. So we start there and say, well, what's owner's intent look like for you? What do you want to accomplish? And then from there, we've kind of created these personas that we've seen really kind of map out the journey from like an entrepreneur through becoming, like a CEO to ultimately becoming the owner. And it doesn't mean you just kind of, flip the switch in the owner box and you're like, okay, I'll see y'all in 5 months. It's nothing like that. There's intent around being a really good owner and what that looks like. So we help big and small organizations navigate that conversation to say, what do you really want? And how do you accomplish that? And it really is a path or a journey to get to that point. It was for us.
And it's a journey that, is still continuing for us, because last year, so 2019, Bryan and I took 3 months off of Belay. And at that time we were sharing the CEO role. Yeah. And we took June, July, and August off. We appointed our COO as the acting CEO in our absence. But in doing that, it took probably three months to even plan for that event. It took talking about the parameters that would pull us back into the business, what would have to happen for us to get the call. Talked about all the things that would equal success for her during that time off. And we used that as a dry run, basically, for our ultimate goal of stepping out of the CEO role and sitting in the co-chair roles, which we did January of this year. What a heck of a year to decide to do that, right?
Welcome to
Congratulations. Yeah.
And, so Trisha became the CEO January 1st. Bryan and I, have monthly board meetings with her. When all of this hit the fan with COVID, it's like, we got a lot of questions. Are you guys stepping back into the business? Are you,
Mm,
are you going back in to fix anything? We're like, no, she is the right leader for this season for the business. So back to trust, right? Like we're there for
absolutely.
her. We're removing barriers. We're helping her critically think through things. But at the same time, she is the leader of the organization, and
Mm,
we trust her to do that. And she's done a phenomenal job. So we want to help other business owners get to a place where they can take a vacation, or they could take a month off, or they could take 3 months off, ultimately appoint somebody else to run the day to day, because it is possible.
yeah. Both of you have been really excellent in not only responding to a given situation, but regularly like iterating, conceptualizing, even making drastic changes. When you think about entrepreneurship today and what's going to happen as people go back to work in more of a quote unquote, I mean, I guess normal is gone, but whatever that
Right.
new normal is going to be,
Yeah.
what advice, what type of skills do you think entrepreneurs need today that maybe even like 10 years ago, I think about 10 years ago, the world was very different.
Sure.
One example would be if it weren't for the rise of social media and the internet about 12 years ago, I don't think I would have the company that I have now.
Sure.
So
Sure.
like, what are other like skill sets that you see kind of coming to the surface, given really a sense of like uncertainty in so many different areas? Are there any things that come to mind?
Yeah, one in particular that I've been really kind of preaching about recently is the need for entrepreneurs to really start to understand cash management
Mhm.
and their cash position,
Very
and
good.
not just to kind of know what your balance is in your bank account, but to really understand it and predict
Yeah.
it. A lot of leaders, and we're seeing this, a lot of businesses are faltering right now
Yeah.
because they couldn't wait for the PPP, and the PPP didn't come,
Right.
and
Or
now
it
all of a
wasn't what they
sudden,
thought it was going to be.
yeah, and their margins were so razor thin, or their cash was so
Yeah.
limited, they literally folded. And
Yeah.
there's just things that businesses need to do to kind of protect around that. And so um, that is one thing I've spent quite a bit of time working with some small business on recently, just kind of unpacking their financials and saying, okay,
Mm.
this is how you look at cash flow, and this is how often you need to do it, and this is what it looks like. So that's a biggie for us right now, is suggesting that. And then I'm with you. It was kind of interesting. Back in February, we were in New York City. We were meeting actually with a publisher, or excuse me, a publishing agent, and we met with two while we were there, and both of them said, "Hey, in this day and age, book launches almost they're looking at your ability to impact social media."
Mm.
And it was way less that we heard that when we did our first books back in
Right.
2018.
Right.
So I think it's an ever increasing thing that you've got to know how to communicate to your tribe on a personal basis and really have a solid strategy behind that. We had kind of a random strategy when we started 10 years ago with Twitter and Facebook, and thank God that stuff was there, because it really helped us speed our name out in the market. But now it's even gone to this whole new level of sophistication with building a tribe and how you talk to your tribe. And it's definitely something for entrepreneurs, whether they're hyper local, like we have our brewery that's very hyper local and very closely focused, or if you're a national brand, there's a lot of strategy you have to eat up in that.
Mm. How about you, Shannon? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think if the world is going to continue to move in a direction of remote work, and I think that we will, I think it is so important to figure out how to lead well remote. And it's so cliche, but it's so fundamental that over communication is of utmost importance during, remote leading. Because if you think about being in the office with somebody, you'll run into them in the break room and you're like, oh, I should have told you XYZ is going on. You don't get that opportunity when you're working remote. So the intentionality, I think, behind communication and the frequency behind communication is going to be so important for leaders to lead remote. Like even at Belay, we have weekly staff meetings where all 90 of our team members hop on Zoom, and it's just as if we were in the office together. And because our leaders want to over communicate what's going on in the organization. They want to reinforce stories. They want to use that as an opportunity to build culture and underscore our values. And I think leaders are going to have to do things like that. We're, leading remote, that continue to, grow their teams.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your insights today. I'm going to leave you with just one last question. There are bound to be entrepreneurs right now that feel pretty discouraged
Sure.
as to the reality of it. And some may feel fairly paralyzed and feel like, everything they've built to date. I've spoken to several restaurant owners, and, they're at like 10% revenue because
Right.
it's only takeout only, and they feel devastated. They're not even sure, like you mentioned, cash flow is an issue.
Sure.
What words of encouragement would you give them as we kind of close from this time and entering the weeks to come?
I've been saying this to myself a lot too. So it is, people will show up again.
Mm.
People will come back to the brewery again. People will eat at your restaurant again. A really good friend of ours is a travel agent. People will travel again. Like, this state that we're in right now feels like it's going to last forever, but it won't. There will be an end to it. It might look a little different, but this complete shutdown will end at some point. And all those businesses that were built before this and are able to survive will start to thrive again. I just believe that to be true.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same opinion as Shannon. This is temporary, but it feels very permanent currently, but it is a temporary thing. I mean, we've had the opportunity now to work professionally through 9/11, through the Great Recession, like in the financial mess in '08 through 2010. And this is one of those things that, whether, you want to hypothesize on if it's a U-shaped recovery or a V-shape or a W-shape, whatever it is, it's all temporary. There's always highs and lows in the economy over the course of a 10-year period. I would say that doesn't maybe help the person right now that's suffering significantly. But what it would say to entrepreneurs right now is that there's still plenty of opportunity. And if you're in a good cash position, I don't want people to miss this. If they're in a really good cash position, this is an opportunity for you to step on the gas. And, we're trying to do that with our brewery and with Belay right now. We're stepping on the gas in certain aspects of our business because we're building a bigger moat. We're making our business more valuable. But if even, and you can do that, maybe you're an entrepreneur and it's $1,000 thing, whatever that is, or $500 thing that you could do to prepare yourself for the next wave of openings or your business, whether it's a restaurant or whatever. If you have the cash, you can step on the gas right now, and that will help you accelerate past your competition. So it's that's what I would say is it's temporary, and you will see an upside in this if you can hang on. I truly do believe that.
Well, thank you to both of you. Those are really encouraging words, and thanks for spending a few moments with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.